Welcome to the Amphigory Effect podcast with your host, Zach Brackett, and your co-host, Justin Marlowe. Let's begin.
What a moron, dude.
That's insane.
Every time I get mad at somebody while I'm driving and say, wow, you must be the stupidest person on the planet, I'm wrong. Because he is the stupidest person on the planet. Bar none.
Shout out to all the family, right?
Yes.
Welcome to the Amphigory Effect podcast. We're trying to make sense of this nonsensical world.
And it is nonsensical. It gets harder every single day.
Every single day. Justin, what are we talking about today, buddy?
Well, Zach, today, this marks almost the 3-month anniversary of us recording this podcast.
That's crazy.
Good for us. And it's made us a little introspective. So
reflective, right?
Yeah, we want to talk a little bit about our goals for this podcast, both for us personally and what we hope the viewers get out of it.
Right.
And where we hope to go in the future.
Yeah, and how it's affected us so far and how we want it to affect us going on. And if you want, I can start. That's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
Well, it was more than 3 months ago that I had an idea for a podcast, and I've been listening to podcasts forever, almost, and I love them, and I think that it does a good job of giving me a lot of different things. I listen to a lot of comedy, some scary stories, some news, and it enriches my life in a certain way that it helps me with my commute and stuff like that. And I really wanted to be that person for someone else. But it's a lot different than I thought it was going to be.
In what way?
Well, it is a lot of work. And I understand that it was going to be, but I don't think you really get it until you start doing something like this.
Yeah, just the aspect of making sure we're actually doing it every single week.
Yeah, getting people.
I've never done anything like that.
No, and that was the hard part, was saying, we're going to do this. And you have people that say, yeah, let's do it. Okay, where do we start? And
there were a lot of flaky people, especially in the early stages.
Yeah. And we had some people that said, yeah, we'll help. And then when it came down, time to do it, said, no. And that sucks because you have all this stuff planned, But so we get started, and I asked Justin at work if he has any way that we could, start recording this thing. If you have we were going to do it on our headphones that we have now with our gaming headphones, and that was going to be bad.
Yeah.
But you said that you were looking for another mic anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so you bought a little condenser mic. And for people who don't know, condenser mics pick up a wide range of sounds. What we have now are dynamic mics, so very focused. It's been great. I feel like I learned a lot. Even though we've been talking about subjects that I felt like most of them I was familiar with already, but especially interviews with Dr. Hoffman and Dr. Bird.
Definitely. Those were really cool.
Yeah.
Especially for me, those were just totally outside of my expertise.
And I get a little bit of that in school, but to sit down with him, especially Dr. Bird, and talk about Mark Twain and the fairy tale that he found was incredible. That was like,
it's like a little piece of history that we're actually
and it was like an inside scoop because he wasn't doing that for everyone, you know. And the fact that he sat down and did that with us, and then we had Joe and Mackenzie on here talking about film and psychology, and even the little bit of research that we do for the shows like this, where we're just sitting down and talking, has helped me learn a little bit more about how the world works. And I think that's, for me, the point of the podcast.
Yeah, I think when I signed on, that's really what I hoped to get out of it, was to expose anyone who listened to, ideas that maybe they hadn't heard before.
Right.
And what really surprised me, though, is a lot of the things that even I thought, like you were saying, I was pretty informed on, I kind of have sort of polished the diamond, I guess.
Yeah.
My ideas are more focused.
Right, and I think it helps you get rid of some of your biases, too, or at least recognize your bias. With an episode on video games and Dungeons and Dragons, it's good to sit back and say, how do I feel about this, and why do I feel that way?
I think that one's a great example because, I remember talking to Dustin, the conversation we had with him like half of that last episode just wouldn't have been the same if we hadn't spoken to him first.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And
because it gave us a new insight on stories.
And who knows what else is out there for us to learn that might change the way that we see things that we're already interested in.
Right. And I think that's where I get my fulfillment with the show is, yeah, I love it when people interact. I mean, I think that's where I want the show to go, is to be completely listener-based, right? So people are submitting every week a couple of topics that we can choose from, and it's very interactive, stuff like that. But even when we're not there yet, and we're not, just being able to do this kind of stuff has helped me broaden my worldview a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get more guests on to keep doing that.
Yeah. It's going to be really good. We have some people lined up in the next couple of weeks. I know we kind of took a break, and I think it's mostly because we've been so busy with school.
Yeah, unfortunately, we still aren't at a point where we can make the podcast our first priority.
No, and it can't be with and with both of us in school. It's hard enough just to get together ourselves every week,
right,
and try to plan other people to come out here and do it too.
But we're definitely still working on doing interviews. So if that's what you guys are interested in,
yeah,
and especially if you have anyone in particular that you might like us to talk to, we're definitely open to doing that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, you guys are the reason that we do this. So if you don't like an area of the show, or like an area of the show, like if you like it more when we do interviews, or you don't like it as much when we do interviews, just let us know. I mean, get on Facebook or social media, or send us an email or whatever, and let us know how to make the show better, because that's what we're trying to do, is make the show the best it can be for you guys and for us. And I feel like we're still learning, because it's only been 3 months. I mean, that's not, most podcasts don't take off for like a year. And so like we want it to be the best for the people who listen, and that's you guys. So we're just trying to give back, I think.
I also want to talk about, now that we've talked about like sort of our financial goals for the podcast, there is the possibility that it never takes off. And the podcast, has maybe 100 viewers tops forever.
Yeah.
I don't think that makes the podcast worthless to me.
No, absolutely not.
And I feel like maybe just doing what I think I get the most out of as a podcaster, rather than worrying about the listeners, that might be something we end up doing instead, if you guys just don't ever send emails or talk to us on Facebook. So
yeah, well, I mean, that's what we've been doing this whole time, and it seems we haven't lost our listeners. So I mean, that's
maybe
good.
We just know better than them.
Maybe. I doubt it. The listener's always right, Justin. Always.
Of course.
That's
sorry.
the first rule of podcasting.
I've never worked retail, so I'm not used to this yet.
But okay, so I know we don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this.
No, I don't want to shill too hard.
Right, but I do want to give some people, especially the listeners who maybe aren't following us on Facebook and don't see our posts every week, some idea of where this is going, because we're making a lot of, not changes, but we're doing a lot of new stuff, especially because it's coming up on summertime. So in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing some interesting things. And I want people to be informed of that. And we're not going to spend this whole episode shilling ourselves to you guys.
Hopefully.
We want to talk about what this podcast, the focus, and how we're going to get to that point. But yeah, I want to spend at least a couple of minutes just talking about where we plan to go.
Let's go ahead and do that then.
Okay. Do you want to talk to the dear listeners about what we got planned on YouTube this next couple of weeks?
Yeah, we've noticed that obviously YouTube is a very popular platform for podcasts and other things, and as we're trying to get better and better quality video, we understand that it's important for us to take YouTube more seriously, and we've had problems getting them edited, but I think we finally got that resolved. We should be getting all of our podcasts up on YouTube as well in the next week or two.
Because we are, I know you guys really don't know this as of right now, but we are video recording all of these, and we have been from pretty much the start. But our channel on YouTube is called Amphigory Effect Media, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes, the description for our podcast. And right now it has a couple of videos. It has our podcast teaser that went up on Facebook. It has a couple of just the audio tracks for the stuff we didn't get video for, but we've got Kenny Grooms. He's come on in the past couple of weeks, and he's been editing like crazy, getting some videos ready. And so by the time this episode comes out, there should be some videos up there. Also, we're doing what we call the aftercast. It's kind of just a goofy thing we like to do after the show. We sit around for like 10, 15 minutes and just kind of relax and talk about whatever we want to talk about. It's much more casual.
Yeah, we've had some cool conversations with our guests, especially.
Yeah, I think that's where the show
forward
really,
to you guys seeing.
Yeah, where it really shines is with people where you can just sit down and relax and kind of have just a conversation instead of a more focused interview topic-based show. But that'll be exclusively on YouTube. That'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And so eventually we will have every week a show come out on wherever you're listening now, a video version that comes out on YouTube, and the aftercast that'll come out on Wednesday every week, and that's going to be really exciting. We also plan to do some different stuff on YouTube, maybe going in, doing some lifestyle stuff outdoors and stuff like that.
Yeah, we got some pretty big ideas for things we might do over the summer.
Yeah, so definitely go and subscribe to that channel so you can see the cool stuff that we're going to be trying to do, and give us some feedback on those videos as well. It'll be really cool to see where YouTube goes. We're also on. I promise this is the last thing. We're on. we're on Patreon now as well. I mean, this isn't as big of a deal to us right this second, but I figured we would get it out there and talk to you guys about it. Justin, why don't you tell people what Patreon is?
Yeah, Patreon is. I think we discussed it a little bit briefly on our last episode about artists, and it's basically a site where you can pledge a certain amount either per month or per video, and you're basically paying for content that you enjoy, totally optionally, to support the creator.
Right, and we have a page up there now. If you go to patreon.com/amp media, AMP media, I'll put a link to that in the description as well. You can look at our page, and we have a goal up there right now just to get 10 patrons over the next couple of months. People that give just anything at all, $1 a month would help significantly. With stuff we want to do, we've, as you guys can tell, we've got new mics and stuff like that. We really want to make the show better, recording wise.
Yeah.
The fewer distractions that we can have, the better. And so that's just a little bit of the stuff that we are putting into the podcast over the next couple of months. And I'm super excited, and I think that's what keeps me going a little bit, is saying, okay, we've got this, right? So we went from a condenser mic to better mics.
Yeah, seeing the progress has been...
It's really cool.
It's the closest I've ever come to raising a kid, you know? It's cool to know that you're improving somehow. I think it's when you get bogged down, whatever you're working on, when you kind of hit the rut, that's when things get their hardest.
And let's talk more about that. So what do you do to get out of a rut like that? I know I've seen a little bit of what we do as a team on this podcast, but let's say you get bogged down at work, because this right now isn't work for us, but what do you do to push through just an everyday kind of slump you get in?
Man, that's tough, especially using the example as work. I'm so beyond the point of burnout.
Yeah.
That it's hard. I think you gotta look for the light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
You have to try and keep in mind what your goals are, and that's something that we've kind of been struggling with a little bit here at the podcast, and I'm sure most artists do, but we know that we want more viewers. That's the number one thing, but we aren't sure how much of ourselves to keep in the show, how much should be...
We don't want to just be...
changed just for the...
Yeah, we want to stay true to who we are, but also give back to you guys as much as we can.
Yeah, so I think that's the number one thing, is just remembering what you're out there to do. And for me, you know, as long as we're talking about topics that I find interesting and we're learning something new, and when like last week when, you know, I applied something that I learned on the podcast to something that I talk about all the time, you know, that was like a light bulb moment. This is actually doing something for me.
I'm learning something.
Yeah. So, I mean, as long as I feel like this podcast is helping me be a better person, then
it's valid to you.
It's valuable. Yeah.
I completely agree. And I think what I like about what we have going is that when we get in kind of a rut where we've maybe, like this past couple weeks, where we haven't had someone to interview, I kind of was like, well, where are we going? You know, I haven't seen a huge growth in listeners. When are we going to make it, man? You know what I mean? But what we do is we sit down and we brainstorm and we say, what's different what are we doing? Where are we getting the most interaction with our listeners? And right now it's on Facebook. So how do we turn that and say, well, we need to get them to the podcast? Well, put more links in there. And that's what we've been doing. And stuff like that. And what do we do with YouTube? What are some cool things? Who can we bring on to help this and this and this? And we just sit and we just bounce ideas back and forth. And it helps me get excited. It's not a word, but it's okay.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean? Like, it gets me pumped up again.
Definitely. I think that's the thing people get bogged down with in projects like this. I mean, I'm sure everybody has a project, not a podcast, but something like it that they've always wanted to do, but they've never been able to sit down and just get it done.
Right.
The most important thing is, actually starting is by far the hardest part.
Absolutely.
Not just getting the equipment, getting together, but just stop talking about it and actually doing it is the hardest part. And once you do that, then everything else becomes easy.
It falls into place.
Yeah, you have these constraints now of, okay, well, our mic quality is terrible.
Right.
We have to improve that. Or, maybe I remember when I was a kid, we wanted to make, me and my friends wanted to make our own game. Oh my God. Well, it turns out the first thing you have to do is learn how to program. If you can't do that, then you're wasting your time talking about everything else.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to quantify everything. You have to, there's a recipe for whatever it is you want to do.
Exactly.
And you need to find out what those things are and you need to gather them up. And then you need to start baking. You can't just keep talking about it forever.
Just make the cookies, man.
Exactly. Just make them. It's not that hard. It really isn't that hard. It takes 15 minutes if you actually do it. Making a podcast isn't that hard if you actually sit down and do it.
No, and I think the thing you need to keep in mind with anything is take it one step at a time. Like, if I sat down and I wrote out all the problems that I'm going to have with the podcast and the things that I'd get overwhelmed. There's no way.
Right. If we had sat there and said, oh, well, we have to have at least $300 quality mics before we get started, we never would have started. It just never would have happened.
Absolutely not. And I think it's taking it one step at a time. Like we said, well, we need mics, period. I said, okay, we got mics. All right, we need a place to shoot. Okay, let's do it.
Zach has a garage.
I have a garage. Let's set up a set. Well, the shelves look like crap. Okay, well, let's get new shelves. So we over time, and this is while we're doing the show.
Right.
We started the show as soon as we had the equipment to do it. And then we say, all right, well, our mic quality still sucks. Well, let's save up money and get better mics. So we got better mics. And then we say, well, we've been recording video. Let's find a way to get it edited and put it on YouTube, because I feel like YouTube is another way for us to interact with our audience. And that's going to be solved very soon. And then we'll go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I think that's what's so great is because you get these small victories over the course of the time.
Yeah,
just make you feel
that's really
good.
The fuel that keeps your motor running when you do start to get bogged down. So, I mean, for other people who are listening out there that might want to, they have this pet project that they've always wanted to do. I just started learning guitar like a week ago.
You're welcome.
Zach gave me some just guitar he had lying around. Like, whatever, here you go, Justin. Okay. And so that's always the biggest hurdle.
Yeah.
Going out and just getting it. Now that I have it, there's no excuse.
Right.
It's just totally up to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And how's that going, by the way?
It's going. I'm practicing my chord changes, my first 3 chords. I'm getting there.
How are your fingers?
They're dead. They're just totally dead.
They're calloused.
Well, they're still sore. It feels like numb. Yeah, I don't think I have the calluses yet.
That'll be next.
Okay. When I'm looking forward to that personally.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great thing. But just don't stop playing.
Oh, definitely not.
Because once you stop, you'll lose them.
It goes away. Yeah. I'm gonna try and start playing my first song in the next week or two.
Ooh,
I'm gonna try and learn Walk the Line. I think like a really simple version.
Get you on the podcast and
it's gonna be great.
Play. We'll get YouTube videos of you.
Oh, it's gonna be rough.
It's gonna be awesome. But see, stuff like that, man. You went through because I remember you had said something about it when I was playing guitar out here. I was just goofing around, and then you started asking a lot of questions. I could see that you were interested. But and then you were like, well, how much is a guitar normally? And I was like, well, to even get a basic one, it's going to be $100, $200 probably. And that's not even a really good one. And I could see you're kind of like, oh, okay. And that's the hurdle, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing you're not going to be able to get over. And so I had one laying around that I'm not going to use. So I was like, well, here. And so that's one hurdle done, right? And then I'm guessing you're looking it up on YouTube and stuff like that and that's another thing.
I mean, that's a great point, and none of it would have happened if Zach hadn't been there. So especially with the podcast, like Zach was talking about Kenny helping us out with video. We've had a bunch of people giving us ideas.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's been crazy.
It's amazing what you can, like, the people that can help you when you just mention that you're interested, or when you ask for help. Yeah, it's crazy what people are willing to do, because if you're actually making something. People just have some kind of inherent want to create things.
That's what I was just about to say, honestly.
So-
Yeah. I was just about to say some kind of creative buildup that people just want to do stuff. Like,
Yeah.
especially,
They just fiend on it.
yeah, we've been talking a lot about it at work because that's where we hang out the most, really,
Mhm.
is at work. And yeah, people at work are going crazy, man. They're like, Jordan's submitted a topic for us, and Anthony and Kenny both are from work, and they're wanting to join and help us. Anthony wants to help us with YouTube, and Kenny wants to edit our videos and stuff like that. And it's just, when you give someone an outlet, or at least just be vocal about what you want to do, that helps, because you'll never know who's going to say, oh yeah, I got that.
I mean, just your professors alone. You don't expect your teachers to want to
Yeah.
come to your. Dustin actually came
He came to my
Zach's
house.
garage, and we recorded here.
Yeah.
You would not expect your teacher to do that. That's
No.
just weird.
No.
And he did it.
And he did it,
So
and it was
it's
fun.
amazing the doors that can open when you just ask.
Yeah, and I think that's what we need to keep doing, and what everyone needs to do with pet projects that you have is just get out there and ask the worst. And I've had some people that I've asked interview that said no, but it's no hard feelings, man. You never know if you don't
Just
ask.
leaving you behind in the dust, man.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll be famous. That's fine.
Yeah,
No.
whatever, dude.
But yeah, I mean, sitting down with Dr. Bird and Dustin, I mean, I would never thought, that they would have said yes, because they're so out of our league.
Yeah, yeah, they really are.
But when people see others,
Well, yeah, when you go from New York Times to the Amphigory effect, I mean, it's
Yeah.
a bit of a step down.
just a
you
little
know,
bit
like,
as of right now. But yeah, I think just keep pushing on and tackle those projects one step at a time. And I think that's the thing we can walk away
yeah,
from.
and I mean, I just feel like I have so many little things that I'm working on side by side, and when it comes to the drudgery of the day-to-day, those little things are what keep me going.
Yeah.
When I'm sitting at work for 12 hours doing the most monotonous things devised by man,
Right.
it's going home and playing that A chord until my middle finger hurts that,
Yeah.
I'm interested in doing.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
thinking of ideas. What do I want to talk about on my podcast? Those are the things that give me the energy to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So you just were talking about how this kind of stuff that you do on the side helps you get through your everyday life. Well, what are you wanting to get out of the podcast and your little pet projects on the side? Do you want to become a professional guitar player, or like what? You know what I mean? Like, where do you want this to go?
Yeah, I mean, I for me, it's just I have this kind of like super naive, ideal man that I strive to become.
Right.
And some of those things, like like learning more about the world, becoming more informed, more intellectual.
Yeah.
And improving my health and my fitness, learning some skills. Those are part of my my naive dream.
I see.
That
Yeah.
I
You
want
wanna be the ideal
strive
man.
towards. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's not a
Yeah.
bad thing. I have a very selfish reason for doing the podcast.
You just want the money, don't you, Zach?
Well, no, not necessarily. Creating is what I love to do. Like I look forward to these days. Like I would record every day if we could. Like I just love doing stuff like this, and I'm so excited to do other things. And I want to do this full time. That's what I want. Not just a podcast, but this is definitely a part of it, and this is where I'm starting. I want to do stuff like this, and maybe even have my own like a media company, right? Where maybe I'm not doing everything, but I get to say who does what, and this show is good, and we'll take this show on, and I'm in this show and this show, and we run like that. Now, I don't care about being rich and famous. I really don't. I would like to reach a point where the shows I do and the things I create bring me enough money to where I can live off of that, and I don't have to do my mundane work like in a factory or retail or whatever it is, because this is what I want to do. And I was kind of hesitant when I started because I didn't want to shatter the dream I had, because you know what I mean? Like I knew that this is a dream I wanted.
Right. When you try and reach out for the ephemeral,
Yeah,
you
and then
realize
it's
it isn't real.
It's
just an
not as
illusion.
good, but it is for me.
Yeah.
Like this was everything I wanted it to be. And I think yeah, so it is a little bit of a selfish reason, but it's already helping me. Like I look
Well,
at the
my
world
reasons are
different.
selfish too.
Well, yeah, but I
So-
think can you have dreams that aren't in some way technically selfish?
Maybe if you're unstable mentally somehow.
Well, I mean, but I want to help others, and I want people to get stuff out of my show, but I get stuff out of the show. and and that's what I'm pushing for, and that's what I want.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel like if I'm improving somehow, I think I mentioned this on the Aftercast last week. I just want to drag people along for the ride.
Right.
And see if they can
learn something too.
Yeah.
Get something out of it too.
Just kind of
see, we're good people.
Get it through osmosis.
Don't listen to anything Wesley says. We're good people. We're philanthropists.
Of a sort.
Yeah, of a sort, exactly. But I also wanted to mention really briefly that the Amphigory Effect is a lot bigger than this podcast. And right now, the only media we're putting forth is this podcast. But I also wanted to point out that there is another side to this. Yeah,
in the Stone Age, the Amphigory Effect was actually a project between Zach and his sister.
Right, and it still is, but it's kind of broken into two parts that make up the Amphigory Effect as a whole. The one side, the media side, is something that I'm heading up with a podcast and YouTube videos and things like that. The writing side is what Mackenzie's heading up, and she's doing this awesome project that you'll probably see around on our Facebook posts and things like that. She is getting work together from people like you guys who do art or writing or anything, photography, all that, and she's trying to make a online magazine, a literary magazine that we'll post on our site. And so that's another branch of the Amphigory Effect that's going into effect really soon. But it's like we're trying to go super broad, and we've talked about that before, so that we can find what area we best help people.
I think that's probably the weirdest part about our podcast is just that
how broad it is.
We don't actually have a narrow
I hate
focus.
when people say, "What's your podcast about?" And I'm like, "Well, making sense of this nonsensical." You know what I mean?
That is a question you have to answer, though. I mean,
yeah, you do.
If we actually somehow have a dedicated fan base, hello, looking at you guys. And you want them to, the best thing you could do to help spread the word if you care about us or this podcast is just tell other people you know about it.
Right. Share
but they're going to
videos,
ask you,
like
what is that podcast about? Like,
right.
what is it? And
but
you're not going to know what to say any better than Zach is.
No. But I think I'm narrowing it down, right? Because our motto is making sense of this nonsensical world, and we say it a lot. And
I think the focus is that in order to make sense of it, there has to be someone behind that the sense is being made to. There has to be a person.
Right.
There has to be a brain,
and
a mind.
And I think that sometimes it's the listener and sometimes it's us. When we interview Dr. Bird, it was definitely me. Like, I was learning so much, and I hope everyone did too, but for me, that I was learning a lot. But when we talked about video games and Dungeons & Dragons, I felt more comfortable talking about those topics because I knew more about them than I felt the average person would. And so that, I feel like, was more educational to the listeners. And so I think that really is what our podcast is about. It's just learning and going through life. This episode of the Amphigory Effect podcast was produced by myself, Zach Brackett, Justin Marlowe, and Wesley Thomas. The logo was done by Haley Nealing. It was edited by Kenny Grooms this time. It's changing up a little bit. The music you hear at the beginning and the end is done by Josh Goforth. And we are all super happy to be here for you guys. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks to everyone helping us make the podcast a possibility. See you next week, guys.
Bye.